Hello everyone 99. 99% don't know the self, and it's not because they aren't looking, it's because they're looking in all the wrong places. We grow up being told who we are by people who never really knew who they were. We're handed names, labels, titles, roles, expectations, and somewhere along the way we start confusing all of those things for identity, but none of it is real, none of it is the self. It's just noise, it's just the shell of a truth that lives deeper than words. You've been wearing masks since before you knew what a mask was. You wore the smile that kept people from asking questions. You wore the silence that kept the peace. You wore the achievements that earned you love and the failures that made you feel unworthy. And after a while you forgot there was even a face behind the mask. You started to believe the performance was the person, but it never was. The self is not something you find out there, it's something you remember in here. And the reason most never meet it is because they're too distracted with everything they've been taught to chase people's status, validation, approval, applause, comfort, image, perfection. But the self doesn't live in any of those things. The self waits in the stillness, the self waits in the struggle, the self waits in the dark, quiet moments when nothing makes sense and everything hurts. And there's nowhere left to run. You don't find the self in success. You find it in solitude, in silence, in the long stretches of waiting where there's no one around to clap for you, and you're forced to ask what's left of me when there's nothing left to prove. Most can't sit in that place because it strips everything away. It takes away the distractions, the performances, the applause, the filters. And when that's all gone, what's left scares people. What's left is the truth, and the truth is most people don't want to know who they are. They want to feel good about who they pretend to be. And those two things are never the same. The self doesn't need to feel good. It needs to be real, and real isn't always pretty. It's not always polished. It's not always strong. Sometimes it's broken, sometimes it's angry, sometimes it's afraid, but it's always honest. And that honesty is where freedom begins. You want to know the self, you've got to be willing to lose everything that isn't you. You've got to let go of the need to be liked, the need to be right, the need to be important, the need to be seen. And that's where the fear kicks in, because if I'm not all those things, then who am I? And that question is the gate and the guard to the deepest truth you'll ever know, because the self doesn't live in identity, it lives in awareness. It's not who you think you are. It's the one watching the thought. It's not the voice in your head. It's the space behind the voice. It's not your story. It's the stillness watching your story unfold. And until you learn to sit with that space, until you learn to become aware of that witness, you'll keep confusing yourself with everything that's happening to you instead of everything you are beneath it. 99% don't know the self because they're addicted to motion, addicted to noise, addicted to becoming something they never needed to be. And the path to the self always begins with stillness, not doing, not fixing, not trying, just being, just breathing, just observing, without judgment, without escape, without control. And when you can do that long enough, the layers begin to fall away, the lies start to lose their power, and something sacred begins to rise. It doesn't rise loud, it rises slow, it rises quiet, it rises like the sun after a long cold night. It rises in the way you start to see yourself differently, not through the eyes of the world, but through the eyes of truth, through the eyes of grace. And when it rises, you realize you were never lost. You were just buried under everything you thought you had to be. Self is not a brand, it's not a role, it's not a title, it's not even your personality. Those are all reflections, not the source. The self is deeper than memory, deeper than emotion, deeper than thought. It's the unchanging awareness that sees it all and holds it all and stays present through it all. And when you find that, when you touch that, everything changes, not because your life gets easier, but because you no longer need it to. You stop chasing things that don't matter. You stop pretending to be someone you're not. You stop living for validation and start living from truth. And that truth brings peace, a kind of peace that isn't dependent on people agreeing with you or circumstances going your way or your past being perfect. It's a peace that comes from knowing I am not the story, I am the space where the story is happening. And once you know that you can't be shaken the way you used to be, you can lose money and not lose yourself. You can lose people and not lose your center. You can fail publicly and still remain rooted privately, because you know who you are, and nothing outside of you has the power to define that anymore. But the journey there isn't easy. It's a shedding, a burning, a dying, of everything false. It's a path of unlearning, of detaching, of standing still when everything in you wants to run back to comfort and distraction. It's the courage to face your pain, not fix it, not run from it, but feel it completely, because beneath the pain is power, and beneath the noise is knowing. And beneath all the layers you are already whole. Most will never go there because it's uncomfortable, it's lonely, it's unfamiliar, and we're trained to avoid all of those things. But if you want to meet the self, you have to be willing to walk through all of it, not around it, through it, because the self isn't hiding, it's just waiting on the other side of everything you've been avoiding. It's waiting in the heartbreak, in the silence, in the breakdown, in the season where nothing makes sense. It's waiting when the applause stops and the noise fades and you're left with just your breath and your being. And when you meet yourself there, without armor, without ego, without image, you find a kind of truth that doesn't need to be spoken because it's felt, it's lived, it's known. And when you know it, you begin to live differently. You move with intention, you speak with purpose, you stop trying to convince and start trying to connect. You stop trying to win and start trying to align. You become less about being impressive and more about being present. And from that place, everything that's meant for you flows more freely, not because you're controlling it, but because you've finally let go of needing to. You start to live in alignment, not ambition. You begin to lead from soul, not strategy. You begin to create from depth, not desire. And everything begins to feel different because it's coming from a place that's no longer trying to prove anything. You're not performing anymore, you're just being. And that being is powerful, that being is magnetic, that being is whole. This is why 99% don't know the self, because knowing the self requires letting go of everything you think you are and stepping into everything you've always been. It requires stillness, and most people only know how to survive in movement. It requires silence, and most people only know how to speak through noise. It requires surrender, and most people only know how to grip tighter. But if you can release, if you can let the ground fall out and trust you won't disappear, you'll find something that no one can take from you. The self is not found in the mirror, it's found in the moments where nothing makes sense, but you're still breathing. It's found in the space between thoughts, the breath between words, the heartbeat between chaos. It's found in the questions that shake you, the answers that fail you, and the silence that finally frees you. And once you touch it, you'll never see life the same again. You'll see the masks people wear and not judge them because you wore them too. You'll see the pain behind the noise and not mock it because you lived it too. You'll see the illusions and not be angry because you believed them too. And you'll walk through this world not needing to shout who you are, because your presence alone will speak it clearly. You'll stop running from yourself and start returning home to yourself again and again and again, until that home becomes your default, until peace becomes your anchor, until presence becomes your power. And when that happens, the world doesn't need to change for you to feel whole, because wholeness was never out there. It was never something to chase. It was always something to remember. And the moment you remember who you are, beneath the noise, beneath the name, beneath the scars, you realize that the only thing standing between you and the life you were born for was the story you were told and the identity you agreed to wear. And now that you see it, you don't need it. You don't need to be everything for everyone. You don't need to prove your worth through perfection. You don't need to find yourself in their reflection, because you found yourself in your own awareness, in your own being, in your own truth. And that truth will carry you when everything else fades. That truth will hold you when the world gets loud. That truth will guide you when the path disappears, because the truth of the self is not fragile. It is fire and stillness and presence and power. And once you know it, once you become it, once you live it, there is no going back, because the self once seen cannot be unseen, and once remembered cannot be forgotten, and once lived cannot be denied. You are not the story, you are the space beneath it. And when you live from that space, everything changes, because patience changes everything, because presence changes everything, because awareness changes everything, because knowing the self changes everything forever.